Part 7. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 61. Chapter 61, A show of force before entering the door. The news that the son of the Zhao family was beaten in the street quickly spread throughout the streets. The Zhao family will not give up easily. They offer a large reward and report the case to the officials, which is a joy to deal with. It's just that at the end of the dispute, there was a lot of money, but the murderer was not even caught. In the end, Zhao Tang's injuries were healed. The Zhao family had no choice but to grit their teeth and accept their bad luck. The business of Qingnanzai is still so good that other merchants in the city are jealous. When the third daughter-in-law Pihan and the fourth daughter-in-law Yafu heard that their daughter was going to work with Fan Qinjiao, not only did they not object, but they were very supportive. They sent people to Fan Qinjiao almost immediately without stopping. Fan Qinjiao also kept his promise and threw Tianyu and Muyan into the shop to follow Yuoluo to get busy. Only now did the two daughters of the Hua family know that the hard-to-find Qingnanzai was actually run by their third sister. This news is simply shocking news to the families of the two innocent daughters. So much so that for a long time they felt like they were dreaming and were floating when they walked. However, after the shock and surprise, the two daughters chose to keep the matter secret. Even their own mothers did not tell it. Since the third sister believed in them, they couldn't let the third sister down. On the other side, Fan Qinjiao and Sushaoxi finalized the time for the first sea shipment. Half a month later, a ship's cargo. Sushaoxi originally wanted to take action in person, but in the end, he was ready to go, but he was told that he only had one shipment. Sushaoxi was helpless and wanted to ask Fan Qinjiao to add more goods. Nahi Fan Qinjiao. The birds don't like him. The court seemed to be in turmoil. Bailey Fengming had not appeared in the mansion outside the palace for several days. Fan Qinjiao simply locked himself in the yard without leaving the door. While preparing for the goods to be sent away in half a month, he began to treat his eyes with Muyan. After half a month of such confusion, I finally managed to collect enough cargo for a boat. It's also the time for the Zhao family to have a banquet and enjoy the flowers. On this day, Suyan came to Fan Qinjiao's house early in the morning and looked at Fan Qinjiao holding the account. She must dress up the young lady in a dazzling way, and she must not let the Zhao family see the joke. Ning'an was also busy beside him. She is very skillful with her hands. Not only did she learn the basic way of braiding her hair from Grandma Su, but she also specially studied several unique styles on her own. She also learned good makeup skills from other grandmothers in the house. First she tied her black hair into an exquisite willow leaf hairpin, and then tied it with a magnolia hairpin. Seeing Aunt Su nodding with satisfaction, Ning'an went to look for clothes again. Knowing that her young lady likes to wear plain clothes, she specially chose a white plum blossom skirt with a golden butterfly belt around her waist. Ning'an was stunned when everything was put away. Are all the ladies in her family so good looking? Fan Qinjiao knew that he came here to enjoy the flowers because of bad intentions, so he deliberately did not take Ning'an with him and got into the carriage alone. The Zhao family is considered a big family in the main city. This time, the eldest daughter of the Zhao family posted the post personally, and naturally there were not a few people who came to support her. When Fan Qinjiao got out of the carriage, he saw many young ladies in gorgeous clothes walking towards the gate of the mansion in pairs. Those faces that looked familiar to each other, it was not that Fan Qinjiao had never interacted with them in her previous life. It was just that she was just a close friend in her previous life, and she had no intention of making any deep friends in this life. A person just stepped straight up the steps. Standing at the door of Zhao's house, Fan Qinjiao handed the post in his hand to the doorman. The boy glanced at it, and then shouted, "Miss Fan Qinjiao from outside the Hua family is here." Almost instantly, all the ladies inside and outside the door turned their eyes. From the time when the Hua family was ordered to negotiate, to the time when the emperor personally reconciled the Hua family with the Fan family, the word Fan Kinjao had been quietly spread in the main city. At the moment, the ladies from each family were curiously looking at this young lady from the Hua family who was gradually gaining fame. Those eyes were full of surprise, curiosity, sarcasm, and even contempt. As far as status is concerned, they are naturally not bad. Even if Fan Kinjao is different, so what, he is not a fatherless one. To put it mildly, he is a bastard. On the other hand, Kaiun, who had been waiting for a long time, was shocked and surprised when he saw Fan Kinjao's graceful appearance with icy muscles and jade bones. I didn't expect that this young lady from the Hua family would be so good looking. Suppressing the shock in her heart, Kaiun took a step forward and took the initiative to say, I was ordered by the young lady to wait here for Kinjao. I am stupid. I don't know whether I should call you Miss Fan or Miss Kinjao. The ladies next to him looked like they were watching a good show. As expected, without a father, one cannot be reputable, and even the title is unfair. Fan Kinjao is not a fool, so he naturally knows that this is a show of force. It's a pity that she is not scared. I heard that the Zhao family was about to get married to the Hua family. I didn't expect that when I posted the post, I didn't even know what to call me. It's a small matter today, but if Miss Zhao family marries to the Hua family in the future, you are Miss Zhao's personal maid, but you don't know how to address me. I'm afraid the entire Zhao family will be embarrassed because of you. Kaiun was stunned by the training. She originally wanted to embarrass this young lady from the Hua family, but why was she beaten down? Fan Kinjao added, since the Zhao family is not interested, it's okay not to go to this kind of flower party. Let's say goodbye. As soon as he said it, he turned around and left. There were ladies waiting to watch the excitement nearby, and it felt awkward just to look at it. Are all the ladies from the Hua family so powerful? Not only are the words sharp and suffocating, but the actions are also so sharp that it is hard to resist. Kaiun didn't expect Fan Kinjao to leave immediately, so he ran out quickly. As if he was afraid that Fan Kinjao would run away, he knelt down directly on the ground. Miss Huajia, why, don't get me wrong, it's your fault, it was your fault. I was confused for a moment. Miss Hiking Huajia, why, please don't take it personally. You are here today, this is our young lady's distinguished guest, and the young lady said that she should not be neglected no matter what. Fan Kinjao lowered his eyes condescendingly and had no intention of speaking. Kaiun is really anxious. If this man left like this, wouldn't her lady want to beat her to death if she found out? Hand gritted his teeth, Yunke could only kowtow to Fan Kinjao. She originally thought that Fan Kinjao would not dare to make things too difficult for her as long as she showed off her face. As a result, she knocked several times but did not hear Fan Kinjao speak. In desperation, Kaiun could only knock her head to the ground with all her strength. Within a moment, bloodshot eyes appeared on his forehead. Fan Kinjao then said calmly, for Miss Zhao's sake, get up. The ladies watching. Are you all needed like this, or is it just for the sake of the master? When he drew Venus's colorful clouds, he stood up, respectfully led Fan Kinjao to the door, let alone the horse, but he didn't even dare to lift it up again. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 62. Chapter 62. The main event is finally about to begin. Kaiun has suffered from Fan Kinjao's mistakes and is really more honest, obediently walking in front and leading the way. The Zhao family has managed the mansion very elegantly, with rugged rock areas, lakes and mountains, and man-made lakes making the scenery pleasant. Fan Kinjao followed Kaiun all the way around a lush bamboo forest, and saw the flowers in the back garden. With the ladies from various families laughing and chatting in groups of 2s, 4s, and 5s, making it very lively. The one with the largest number of people around is naturally today's protagonist, the eldest lady of the Zhao family. Zhao Jianjia saw Fan Qinjiao coming slowly led by Kaiun from a distance. No wonder her future mother-in-law didn't like this young lady, with her fair face, bright eyes, and white teeth. With such an appearance, even she didn't like her. One who is willing to stand side by side with it. Zhao Jianjia felt even more uncomfortable when she looked at Kaiun leading the way. Just now, she heard a servant come to report what happened at the door of the house. Even if Kaiun is a dog, it is still her Zhao family's dog. Fan Qinjiao, who is visiting the house for the first time, can beat the dog without even looking at the owner. As soon as Yun Cai stood in front of him, Zhao Jianjia spoke worriedly, "What's wrong with you? Who bullied you?" Yun Kai glanced at Fan Qinjiao and remained silent. Zhao Jianjia stretched out her slightly trembling hand and wiped Yun Cai's blood-streaked forehead herself. Even though the ladies around knew that Yun Cai was a little more arrogant at the door just now, seeing the distressed look on Zhao Jianjia's face, their hearts gradually turned away. I didn't expect Miss Zhao to be so sympathetic to the servants around her. She was really kind-hearted. Comparatively, the lady from the Hua family is. Don't you want to say something, Miss Huajia? Why, the person who spoke here was Sun Kongtong, the second daughter of Sun Kuyu, the salt transport department of the imperial city, and Zhao Jianjia's playmate since childhood. Hearing this, Fan Qinjiao stared at Sun Kongtong, his dark eyes calm, but so cold that there seemed to be a sudden flash of cold light. Sun Kongtong felt uncomfortable all over. He frowned and spoke again, "I'm talking to you. Is this all the upbringing of your Hua family?" Fan Qinjiao looked at you again and then said without changing his expression, "Do I know you?" Sun Kongtong. Normally, of course she has to introduce herself to her family, but is she worthy of someone who returns home halfway and has no upbringing by her father? Fan Qinjiao stood there calmly. "If you don't speak, I won't speak. As long as you don't feel embarrassed. Anyway, I'm just not embarrassed." How could Sun Kongtong not be embarrassed? Faced with the gazes around her, her toes were curled together in embarrassment. Almost bite the bullet and said word by word, "My father is Sun Kuyu, the salt transport department of the imperial city, and I am Sun Kongtong, the second young lady of the Sun family." Fan Qinjiao said "Oh," and then said, "I wonder what the second young lady of the Sun family wanted to ask just now." Sun Kongtong was about to go crazy. He pointed at Kaiun and said, "You are a guest when you come to the door." Miss Huajia, why punished Miss Zhao's maid in this way? Is this the so-called Huajia education? Fan Qinjiao's expression was indifferent. Miss Sun also said that it was a punishment. Since the punishment was for neglecting one's duties as a servant, I would have looked on coldly if it were in someone else's house, but this matter is related to the reputation of my future sister-in-law, and is there any reason to ignore it? Or is it that Miss Sun is turning a blind eye to everything around her in order to protect herself? Facing these three consecutive questions from the soul, Sun Kongtong's whole face turned green. Nearly couldn't hold a breath in his throat. The ladies around me who wanted to say something to help and leave a good impression in front of Zhao Jianjia. Hold back. This young lady from the Hua family is so terrible, every word is as sharp as a needle. The key is that what people say, you really can't find any fault with it. Fan Qinjiao stood as steady as a mountain, with a calm face and a calm expression. She will not back down, and there is no need to back down. Otherwise, wouldn't everyone who comes to test the water in the future be thinking about stepping on her? Zhao Jianjia, who originally wanted to mobilize the people around him to accuse Fan Qinjiao, saw this and had no choice but to walk over and hold Fan Qinjiao's hand. "Qinjiao, don't get me wrong, Kongtong doesn't mean anything else, it's just that he has always been partial to me." Fan Qinjiao looked at Zhao Jianjia calmly. Although he was apologizing, he kept talking about Sun Kongtong from beginning to end. On the contrary, he made light of what he had just caused. "Ah! But since Zhao Jianjia came out to negotiate peace, she would not continue to make trouble. Moreover, she would shake hands with Zhao Jianjia and make peace. Although we have never met each other, I still call Miss Zhao's sister-in-law. This matter is not big at all. Since the sister-in-law has already spoken, of course I will not say more, but I didn't expect that my eldest sister-in-law is so beautiful and has a gentle personality. I think my eldest brother will be very happy to see her. Zhao Jianjia didn't expect Fan Qinjiao to be so enthusiastic, and smiled politely. Qinjiao can have such thoughts. I really want to thank you for Kongtong. Fan Qinjiao seemed not to have heard what he just said, but said with concern, the sun here is too strong. How can my sister-in-law's delicate skin be basked in the sun? I will go with my sister-in-law to enjoy the cool air. Zhao Jianjia was still thinking about turning around and dragging Sun Kentong, but Fan Qinjiao didn't give her that chance at all. He pulled her and turned around and left. He was so affectionate that Zhao Jianjia couldn't refuse at all. Fan Qinjiao naturally understands Zhao Jianjia's thoughts. But what should I do if she not only doesn't want to cooperate, but also wants to expose her? The ladies around looked at the affectionate scene between the sisters-in-law, and then looked at Sun Kentong, who was left alone aside. If they weren't well bred, they would probably laugh out loud. That's it, it's just a thankless effort. Sun Kentong was even more embarrassed. She is not stupid, and she naturally knows that she has done something thankless. What could she do if she was embarrassed? Wouldn't it be more embarrassing if she turned around and walked away? She could only bite the bullet and follow the footsteps of the others and walk towards the pavilion together. After everyone entered the pavilion, Zhao Jianjia quickly greeted the maids to put fresh fruits and various snacks on the table. While the maids were pouring in, she was finally able to walk to Sun Kentong's side and explain in detail what had just happened, as well as many things she didn't want others to hear. Fan Qinjiao stood on the other side of the pavilion, watching with seeming disbelief. Looking at Sun Kentong's face that gradually regained its color, she knew that Zhao Jianjia must have coaxed him away. I wanted to give her a hand, but I didn't think I was stupid. In this case, she wanted to see how Zhao Jianjia wanted to go straight to today's topic. Is everything you said true? On the other side of the pavilion, Sun Kongtong was stunned. Zhao Jianjia nodded helplessly. You and I have had a relationship for so many years, why should I hide it from you? Kaiun is the maid beside me. I know best what kind of jewelry she has, but I didn't expect Qinjiao to be able to wear the same ones as the maid. Earrings, she is so pitiful, why do you need to worry about her anymore? Sun Kongtong originally thought that the discrimination just now was due to a more knowledgeable person, but he never expected to be so ignorant. And she was actually attacked by a frog in the well? Sun Kongtong's unquenchable anger flared up again. Zhao Jianjia added, Kongtong, please don't be impulsive. Let's take a step back. Calculate. Forget it. Sun Kentong shook off Zhao Jianjia and walked towards Fan Qinjiao. If the face of the frog at the bottom of the well is not torn off today, her surname will not be Sun. Zhao Jianjia turned around calmly and chatted with other ladies again. Even if the Dongchuang incident happened, Fan Qinjiao would not be afraid if she insisted that the earrings were from her. She could just blame Yunkei. Anyway, what everyone laughs at is Fan Qinjiao's stupidity and ignorance. Fan Qinjiao looked at Sun Kentong rushing towards him, and an indescribable feeling of excitement spread through his heart. The main event is finally about to begin. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 63. Chapter 63 Fan Qinjiao, you are so good at pretending. Sun Kentong's anger has been ignited to the highest level now, and he wants to make Fan Qinjiao look embarrassed. So that as soon as she stood in front of Fan Kinjao, she stretched out her hand and pulled Fan Kinjao's ear. Miss Hwajia's earrings are really unique. How about taking them off and showing them to all of us? Fan Kinjao actually really admires Sun Kantong. Because she was very curious about how someone with such a brain could live to be so old. So in order to cooperate with Sun Kantong in taking off the earrings from his ears smoothly, Fan Kinjao had to take a few steps back and then turn his face slightly. Naturally, she leaned against the fence of the pavilion. Sun Kantong was so focused on the earrings that she didn't realize that she had also been led to the fence. Desperate to make Fan Kinjao embarrassed, she didn't even look at the earrings. She opened her mouth and said with a smile, "I thought it was a good thing, but it turns out it's just something that servants often bring. The taste of the lady outside the Hua family is really unique." Fan Kinjao took in all her beaming looks, and then hands out his toes calmly. Sun Kantong, who was still gloating about his misfortune, felt his feet trip and he fell towards the lake. The ladies around were all frightened. Sun Kantong was so frightened that he screamed, thinking that he was going to die. Fan Kinjao quickly grabbed Sun Kantong's clothes at the back with quick eyes and hands, and a worried voice followed, "Don't worry, Miss Sun, I've caught you." Sun Kantong finally breathed a sigh of relief after hearing this. But before she could take a breath, she suddenly felt the hands on her clothes loosen. Sun Kantong didn't lift it up in one breath. He was so choked that he rolled his eyes. Is this going to save her or harm her? The most damning thing is that Fan Kinjao's frightened voice continued, "Don't be afraid, Miss Sun, I will find a way to pull you up." Sun Kantong. She was scared to death. Because she could clearly feel that the hand holding the clothes on her back was loosening and tightening, tightening and loosening again. Finally she couldn't let go, and started to push her towards the lake again. After going back and forth like this for several rounds, Sun Kantong felt like a salted fish that couldn't turn over. He had no strength left to struggle except at his mercy. Finally, with a blur in front of his eyes, Sun Kantong was pulled back to the pavilion. Sun Kantong, who had no strength at all, lay on the ground in a panic, with a wet face. It was unclear whether it was tears or runny nose. Zhao Jianjia was stunned and walked over anxiously. "How are you, Kong Tong? Don't scare me." She was really worried and even more scared. If something happened to Sun Kantong in her place, she would not want to lose face once word spread. Sun Kantong raised his head blankly, and when he saw Fan Kinjao, he raised his hand and pointed angrily, "Fan Kinjao, you are actually trying to kill me on purpose." Fan Kinjao felt aggrieved. How could Miss Sun slander me like this? I slandered you. You were the one who wanted to kill me just now, and everyone saw it. Sun Kantong looked at the people around him, trying to find voices of approval. As a result, wherever the naked eye looked, I saw those ladies looking at her as if they were crazy. They saw clearly just now that it was clearly Miss Hwajia who saved people in time, but not only did they not get any benefit, but they were also questioned like this: what did Miss Sunjia want to do? Sun Kantong had no choice but to hold Zhao Jianjia's hand. "Jianjia, you saw it, right? She wants to kill me." Zhao Jianjia certainly hopes to promote Fan Kinjao. It's just that everyone could see what happened just now so clearly. Sun Kantong was so angry that he was going to die. But she knew it, even if she was really angry to death, no one would believe her. Fan Kinjao is so good at pretending. Fan Kinjao's eyes were calm, and the innocent look was still on his face. Since she dares to do it, she has the confidence to put on a good appearance. For people like Sun Kantong, only by being scared can they become honest. At least the next time she is used as a weapon, she must weigh her own weight first. Sun Kantong is really honest. Honest honesty. So much so that when she saw Fan Kinjao walking towards her again, she instinctively backed away. However, Fan Kinjao didn't look at her at all. He just looked at the earrings that were broken on the ground, and said with a heartache, "It's broken. It was a gift from my future sister-in-law. What should I do?" Zhao Jianjia did not expect that at this time, Fan Qinjiao was thinking about the earrings, and felt extremely contemptuous. After all, he was raised outside, but he actually used fish eyes as a treasure. Zhao Jianjia didn't panic. He stood up and took Fan Qinjiao's hand. "It's not a valuable thing at all. If it breaks, I'll give you something better." Fan Qinjiao held Zhao Jianjia's hand, nodded and said, "The elder sister-in-law must keep her word." Zhao Jianjia nodded, already prepared for someone to continue questioning the earrings. As long as she puts all the responsibility on Kaiun, everyone will laugh at Fan Qinjiao's ignorance. Sure enough, soon the ladies gasped in surprise from behind. That's... How so? This is that... Zhao Jianjia turned around with satisfaction and said the words she had prepared, "What's going on? But what's wrong with those earrings? It must be the good things done by that girl in Kaiun. They are all spoiled by me. That's why." Before he finished speaking, Zhao Jianjia was stunned. "I saw that the earring that was picked up had been broken into two halves, but even so, it still couldn't stop the earring from being as clear as water. Under the sunlight, it is even more icy and radiant." This time it was Zhao Jianjia's turn to be confused. The young lady holding the earrings in her hand looked at Sun Kentong with a smile. "Miss Sun family is really amazing. Do all the servants in the family wear jade? But how do I remember that Mr. Sun is the fourth rank, and every month his salary is only 110 taels of silver, or do you mean that Mr. Sun loves his servants like his own children, and even if he doesn't eat or drink, he still wants to dress them in gold and silver?" Fan Qinjiao knows the young lady who is speaking. Han Jingchen, the daughter of Han Yao, the governor of Chuanzhou. In the last life, Han Jingchen was very eclectic and often did shocking things. Fan Qinjiao had met Han Jingchen a few times, but at that time she had already been brainwashed by Fan Swinning into a domineering young lady, so she could not catch Han Jingchen's eyes. Unexpectedly in this life, Han Jingchen took the initiative to get involved. Sun Kongtong didn't expect that he was already a coward, so why did he still have his own affairs? Listening to Han Jingchen's words, her head lowered to her chest, as if she could squeeze through any crack in the ground. Not only was she in a mess, but she also made such a big joke, she didn't have to see anyone anymore. As if thinking of something, Sun Kongtong suddenly glared at Zhao Jianjia. Since that earring was a gift from Zhao Jianjia, how could she not know the material? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 64. Chapter 64, Her shield is relatively leaky. Zhao Jianjia was on pins and needles being stared at by Sun Kentong, but he really had no time to explain. Now she is also in a lawsuit and is in a panic. That thing was obviously given to her by Kaiun, so why did it turn into jade? Or... Zhao Jianjia looked at Fan Qinjiao beside him, the panic in his eyes that he had forgotten to hide. If it is said that Fan Qinjiao changed the earrings, and then waited for Sun Kongtong to take the initiative to provoke. Zhao Jianjia didn't dare to think any more, even the hand held by Fan Qinjiao could not help but tremble. If it is really what she thinks, then this Fan Qinjiao is a bit too scary. Fan Qinjiao made things happen like this, so there was no way he could let Zhao Jianjia run away. She tightened her trembling hand and said innocently, "My sister-in-law is so kind to me. Not to mention jade, even the best Hessian jade I want can be found for me." Zhao Jianjia. You really dare to say it? Han Jingchen followed the reputation and said with a smile, as expected of the eldest lady of the Zhao family, her generosity really amazes us. In this case, I am really curious about what the eldest lady of the Zhao family will give to make up for it. It's the hurting heart of Miss Huajia. Why? Fan Kinjao then said, "Sister-in-law, of course she loves me. She can even give me jadeite of all colors, so the next thing she gives will naturally be better, don't you think so, sister-in-law?" Singing in harmony like this, the ladies in the pavilion were all curious. Zhao Jianjia didn't know what expression to show when facing the eyes that were directed at her. His entire face was as white as paper, and his palms were sweating. "Go and get the fine Hishan jade pendant from my house." When Zhao Jianjia said these words, he felt his heart bleeding. But what can be done? If she pretends to be awesome, she will get over it even if she grits her teeth. Fan Kinjao admired Zhao Jianjia's pale face, which could be said to be as smooth as fat now. With a flash of his peripheral vision, Fan Kinjao looked up and saw Han Jingchen smiling playfully at her. Fan Kinjao was silent for a while, but also showed a faint smile. Since they are all understanding people, there is no need to say too much, just a look is enough. Han Jingchen. This chick and her appetite. As the high-quality Hishan jade pendant was brought over by the maid, Fan Kinjao took it over unceremoniously. A group of young ladies around were attracted to watch. Fan Kinjao held up the jade pendant and praised him in various ways, and the ladies around him also followed suit. But look at Zhao Jianjia again. It's even more heartbreaking. The atmosphere in the pavilion was relatively harmonious, except for Sun Kongtong, who had been clamoring to leave. Sun Kongtong has lost all his face now that he is here. If he doesn't leave, will he still be waiting to be laughed at? The ladies around me naturally tried to persuade her. Everyone came to the flower viewing party, but one of them left angrily. This kind of thing is easy to say but not easy to hear. After all, everyone wants to be honorable and respectable. Zhao Jianjia knew that she should take the initiative to persuade him at this time, but she didn't dare. She was worried about the way Sun Kongtong looked at her just now, and she was even more afraid that Sun Kongtong would offend her regardless. Fan Kinjao was sitting on the stone bench, playing with his jade pendant without paying attention to what was going on outside the window. Evil people have their own way of doing things, and she wished she could see this excitement more often. Zhao Jianjia saw that Fan Kinjao was empty. He smiled and moved forward, pretending to take care of his future sister-in-law and pretending not to see Sun Kongtong's mischief behind him. As a result, before she could sit firmly, she was forced to stand up again by a rushing figure. I took a closer look and saw that it was Han Jingchen. Han Jingchen did not look at Zhao Jianjia, but asked Fan Kinjao next to her, "Can you take a look at it too?" Fan Kinjao handed it over directly. Casual look. Han Jingchen didn't expect Fan Kinjao to be so successful, so she felt so happy that she glanced at Zhao Jianjia again from the corner of her eye. She just couldn't stand the hypocrisy, and she didn't know why so many people were blind. Sun Kongtong on the other side of the pavilion was making more and more noise. Zhao Jianjia was so frightened that her palms were sweating, fearing that Sun Kongtong would rush over and grab her to question what had just happened. When she was helpless, she had no choice but to come over again and look at Fan Kinjao and said, "It's rare for me to come here to have fun. As my future sister-in-law, I don't even know how to be a landlord. Kinjao shouldn't care. I'm here today. The ladies are also very good-natured and will get close to you." Zhao Jianjia looked embarrassed and helpless, but he singled out Han Jingchen to seize the throne, and made it difficult for Fan Kinjao to get along with him. If you don't have enough brains, I'm afraid you will be plotted by Zhao Jianjia. But obviously Han Jingchen, who was sitting motionless on the stone bench, was not. Fan Kinjao. Neither is it. It's all thanks to my sister-in-law that I can get to know the ladies from each family today. Sister-in-law, please don't blame yourself. I just don't know why the Miss Sun family's side has been causing trouble for so long. If you want to use her as a shield, you also need to see if her shield is leaky. Zhao Jianjia. She always felt that Fan Kinjao did it on purpose, but she had no evidence. Han Jingchen is not a person who likes to talk up to others, instead of standing here when you have time, Miss Zhao, it would be better to go to Miss Sun's place and have a look. If there is really any unpleasantness, everyone's faces will be full of displeasure, not pretty. The veins on the backs of Zhao Jianjia's hands popped out. He almost turned around and walked to Sun Kentong's side. Sun Kentong was making such a fuss because he wanted Zhao Jianjia to give him an explanation. However, Zhao Jianjia couldn't explain anything at the moment. He just persuaded Sun Kentong to go to the backyard and lie down for a while. Sun Kentong's fire has burned down to his hair, where can he lie down? He glared at Zhao Jianjia fiercely, then turned around and left. Zhao Jianjia did not expect that Sun Kentong would be so disrespectful to him, and his face was a little ugly, and he didn't even try to save him. The commotion in the pavilion was extremely embarrassing. At the pavilion, Han Jingchen and Fan Qinjiao were having a lively conversation. Other ladies. Could it be that Feng Shui is different? Almost subconsciously, everyone moved closer to Fan Qinjiao and Han Jingchen. Han Jingchen raised her eyebrows and looked at Fan Qinjiao, and whispered, "You little girl is quite courageous. You even dared to push the Sun family's powder keg into the lake." Fan Qinjiao smiled and said, "Just help her calm down the fire." Han Jingchen didn't expect Fan Qinjiao to admit it like this. She was stunned for a long time before giving a thumbs up. Other ladies looked at Han Jingchen, who was smiling sweetly in a group with Fan Qinjiao, and were surprised and even envious. Han Jingchen's family status is something they all want to curry favor with, but Han Jingchen's temper is something that not everyone can get close to. Zhao Jianjia was so stung by the scene in the pavilion that her eyes hurt, and she could hardly keep the smile on her face. She never thought in her dreams that the flower viewing party she held would actually become her own torment. Half an hour later, we finally made it to the end of the flower viewing party. All the ladies walked out together. Even though Zhao Jianjia hated Fan Qinjiao in his heart, he still saw Fan Qinjiao out personally with a smile on his face. As soon as he arrived at the door of Zhao Mansion, he heard the ladies whispering again. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 65. Chapter 65. How could it be such a coincidence? Zhao Jianjia was really scared now. She just thought something had happened again and hurried out. As a result, as soon as I stepped over the threshold, I was stunned. There was a carriage parked under the steps of Zhao's house, and a handsome young man was standing leaning against the carriage. The young man has a majestic body and a dignified appearance, with raised eyebrows and eyes as bright as stars. The setting sun's afterglow shone on his navy blue robe, making him even taller and stronger. The faces of all the ladies on the steps turned red, and Zhao Jianjia felt that her whole body was getting hot with embarrassment. The young man seemed to be aware of the gaze behind him. He raised his head somewhat displeasedly, but when he saw a small figure, he showed a hearty smile. Fan Qinjiao was also stunned, but soon he walked away with a smile. "Brother, why are you here?" Hua Fengning was afraid that his Qinjiao would trip on the steps, so he hurried over to help her. "I said I would come to take you back that day, but you forgot about it." Fan Qinjiao smiled flatteringly. She had indeed forgotten. Hua Fengning didn't mean to blame, he just pulled her hand down the steps while laughing. This scene makes me really envious of those ladies on the stairs. There are quite a few of them who have older brothers, but not many are so considerate and handsome. Zhao Jianjia really didn't expect that her future husband-in-law would be such an outstanding man. Looking at the envious eyes of the ladies, his heart was beating wildly. Instinctively, I raised my chest and raised my head, and walked down the steps. Having been an old girl for these few years, of course she hopes to be the one who is envied. It was just Zhao Jianjia's move, but it could not escape Fan Qinjiao's eyes. Fan Qinjiao raised the jade pendant in his hand while retracting his peripheral vision. "Brother, does it look good?" The Hua family man has practiced martial arts since he was a child, and Hua Fengning is also a rough person. He cannot appreciate this kind of thing, and he doesn't know how to describe it even when he is in trouble. Fan Kinjao blinked mischievously. Brother doesn't say anything, but does it look like the jade pillow on grandma's bed? Hua Fengning was also amused. You seem to be thinking of the same place as me. Zhao Jianjia's feet, which were still walking down the steps, suddenly stopped. Her jade pendant was regarded as a worthless jade pillow. How could she still have the nerve to put it up? Looking at Fan Kinjao again, he threw the jade pendant directly to Ninghan next to him in disappointment. If my brother doesn't like it, I don't like it. I'll give it to you to wear it and play with it. Ninghan was not happy. Miss, that servant might as well ask for the old lady's jade pillow. At least it occupies a large area. Zhao Jianjia almost rolled down the steps after hearing this. Watching Hua Fengning helplessly drag Fan Kinjao into the carriage, he was so angry that he almost suffocated. Han Jingchen on the side was so happy that her eyes almost flew up. It's great, I can eat 2 more bowls of rice when I go home tonight. Fan Kinjao, who was sitting in the carriage, looked through the window at Zhao Jianjia, who was stuck on the steps and couldn't get off the steps. His eyes gradually turned cold. In her last life, she came to visit in the name of the third prince's concubine, and the whole Zhao family knelt down to welcome her. Later, even if she was imprisoned or placed under house arrest, she was still the queen, and Zhao Jianjia still had to bow down and bow to her when he saw her. In your last life, you, Zhao Jianjia, never stood up. The same is true in this life. Hua Fengning certainly knew that Miss Zhao must have been there just now, but he didn't know which one she was. But he didn't care. Firstly, it was difficult to meet without permission before they were engaged. Secondly, he didn't want Kinjao to feel left out. Compared with his own sister, he always felt that he owed Kinjao. So Hua Fengning secretly vowed to spend this time with Kinjao. Unexpectedly, Fan Kinjao became busy. The Chinese Valentine's Day is approaching, and all the major merchants in the main city are busy, and Qingnanzai is not far behind. Fan Kinjao made many new styles of sachets one after another. In fact, he went to Ziyufang to make different styles for men and women, and then added medicinal materials with different ingredients into them. Each 2 sachets form a pair. Once they meet a pair, they will produce a special aroma. 2 sachets put together can form a brand new pattern. Originally, the eyes of the wealthy people in the main city were all fixed on Qingnanzai. Now that they heard such new things, they flocked to it even more. In almost a few days, all the sachets on the shelves were sold out. Qingnanzai made a lot of money, but Fan Kinjao was always worried. Su Shaoxi has been away for a while since she personally escorted the shipping. It was about time to arrive, but she never received a safe letter. Su Shaoxi can expand maritime transportation, and he is by no means an unreliable person. Could it be that something happened? Oh. After waking up, Ta Shui suddenly became energetic. Even his eyelids that had always been droopy opened. He rolled out of the bed and pulled Fan Kinjao's skirt out. Fan Kinjao knew that Ta Shui would be so energetic only when he smelled the scent of Qi Wu. Immediately got up, hugged Ta Shui and walked out. All in all, it had been a while since she had seen Bailey Fengming. In fact, Fan Kinjao was a little angry at Bailey Fengming's sudden absence. But she didn't know where her anger came from. Bailey Fengming's eyes have come to an end, but if he wants to be completely cured, he still needs some medicine to finish. So after thinking about it, Fan Kinjao attributed this anger to Bailey Fengming's irresponsibility for him. In the mansion in the western suburbs, Chaiwu was lying obediently in the yard. As soon as Ta Shui saw Chaiwu, she rushed towards him, and the 2 little things formed a ball. A figure stood quietly in the depths of the yard. It was a bit dark and Fan Kinjao could not see clearly. Confirming the source of the anger in his heart, Fan Kinjao walked up with a rare expression of sternness, quite as if he was asking for an apology. How can you delay just because you're procrastinating? Do you know that you are irresponsible to yourself? Such a blow to the head immediately knocked Lian 11 into confusion. He quickly knelt on the ground and said, Miss Kinjao, please calm down, His Highness the Crown Prince really can't get away. Fan Kinjao. Isn't it actually him? Lian 11 was afraid of being beaten again, so he hurriedly explained, something happened in Yuzhou, and the Emperor was furious. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has requested orders to go to Yuzhou. I'm afraid everyone has arrived by now. Fan Kinjao frowned. Is it too much of a coincidence? This time, the shipment she asked Sushaoxi to ship by sea also arrived in Yuzhou. Fan Kinjao couldn't ask too much about the royal affairs, so he stayed with Ta Shui and Chai Wu for a while before leaving the mansion in the western suburbs with Ta Shui reluctant to leave. Ta Shui seemed to be really attached to Chai Wu. He had been unable to cheer up since they separated. In the end, he simply put his furry head into Fan Kinjao's arms. Fan Kinjao looked at Ta Shui, who was balled up into a bun in his arm, and sighed silently. She knew why Texu was lost. What she didn't know was that the loss in her heart came from this. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 66. Chapter 66. Did I really give you face? A few days later, there was still no news about Sushaoxi. This person is like evaporating from the world without a trace. Fan Kinjao's mood has always been up and down these days, and his face is also extremely gloomy. The people waiting around him are aware of it and are cautious all day long. After breakfast at Minjiuiwan, Fan Kinjao came to Kingnanzai to check the accounts as usual. There were two women in fancy clothes standing in the lobby. They were selecting things under Yulo's introduction. They kept saying that they didn't care about the money and only wanted to introduce the best. Yulo likes people who are rich and have a busy smile. Fan Kinjao just glanced at it and entered the back room. Ninggan followed and naturally found the record book, thinking about helping Yulo write down what the two ladies bought. In their Kingnanzai, after every lady and lady bought something, the lady told them to record it in the record. Although she didn't know the reason, she must do what the lady told them. Fan Kinjao waved his hand to Ninggan, no need to remember it. Ninggan was stunned. Fan Kinjao said, just remember the preferences of the ladies and ladies in the city. Recording this kind of thing is for convenience when paving the way in the future. But no matter which family in the city you want to please, it is not the turn of the concubine and aunt. No matter how favored the concubine and aunt are, they cannot surpass the eldest lady in appearance. Ninggan was extremely curious, how does the young lady know that the person outside is not the madam? Fan Kinjao shook his head speechlessly, too lazy to explain. No matter how powerful a lady is, she has to be cautious about how much she wears. The higher the family, the more particular about it. Like the kind of clothing that is neither high nor low, it will only be a concubine or aunt of a wealthy family. In the lobby, the two women, who didn't know they were being despised, were still directing Luyu around. Yulo could see that they were deliberately calling her names to elevate their status, but she was not angry and even got their names out of the two women's mouths. One is called Sushi Zi Ping and the other is Sushi Yi. Ninghan inside was stunned. In Ziliang, only the head wife can take her husband's surname first and then add her birth surname, while concubines can take their husband's surname directly, and aunts can remove their surname and only keep their first name. Now both of them have the surname Su. It was obvious that my young lady guessed it correctly. The two women in the lobby didn't care. They were proud of their concubine, and they talked about the rights and wrongs of the principal wife of the house without hesitation. Su Ziping said, I heard that the third young master hasn't made any move yet. I'm afraid it's going to be more serious this time. Sui snorted disdainfully. I also heard that the third young master seemed to have contacted a big buyer, so he personally participated in this shipping. Who would be a serious person who could like the third young master? If you ask me, he is just a stinky fish looking for a rotten shrimp, but that person is our lucky star. That's a good thing. If the third young master really dies, the eldest lady will be completely helpless. In this way, she can make room for our sisters to be the wife. So I would like to congratulate my sister. I should congratulate my sister for guessing correctly. In the lobby, the two concubines laughed together. In the accounting room on the back, the Pengjings who were doing the accounting were all disgusted. Is this a concubine? These are simply two monsters that eat people without spitting out their bones. Tianyu and Weian, who were selecting herbs, were both secretly thankful. Fortunately their father did not take any concubines. Fan Qingjao was also angry, but he smiled angrily. There have been so many things that happened recently. I never expected that those two concubines were actually the concubines of the Su family. And the one they said they were eager to abdicate in favor of someone more powerful was Su Shaoxi's mother. There are many people who are pickled, but she is the first time she has seen such a high-spirited madam. Who gave them face? They degraded Mrs. Su like this. Where did they put the face of Su Shaoxi, and where did they put the face of her who cooperated with Su Shaoxi? Fan Qingjao raised his head and looked at Tianyu. Go and call Yuoluo in. Tianyu nodded and hurried out. Not long after, Luyu followed in. Give me all the things that the two women outside are interested in. If they ask, tell them that they were booked by someone else at a high price, and then unload all the same batch of goods from the shop in front of them. Miss, they bought 300 taels of things. Yuoluo hesitated. Such fat sheep could not be slaughtered every day. Fan Qingjao did not hesitate. The sheep can be slaughtered slowly, but the demon must be defeated as soon as possible. The moon sets. Where did the monster come from in broad daylight? But looking at Fan Qingjiao's cold face, Luyu didn't dare to hesitate and walked out in panic. Soon, the unhappy complaints of the two concubines of the Su family could be heard in the lobby. The words they spoke were so unpleasant that Tianyu almost rolled up his sleeves and rushed out. Pengjing grabbed Tianyu and said, "Fourth miss, you don't know martial arts." Tianyu was so angry that he said, "I can pull out their hair." Pengjing. Obviously 2 against 1, you are bald but others still have a head. Forget it. While there was a commotion in the accounting room, the two concubines of the Su family in the lobby were also sent out by Yuoluo. Fan Qingjao, who had been sitting on the stool, suddenly stood up and made a gesture to walk out. Tianyu was stunned for a moment. "Third sister, what are you doing?" Fan Qingjio's voice was light. "Subjugate the demon, and by the way, pull out your hair." Everyone. A person who has always been taciturn actually started joking. They may have collectively experienced auditory hallucinations. In the lobby, all the goods have been dropped by Yuoluo and are currently placed on the counter. Fan Qingjao asked Ninghan to call the carriage over, and then ordered people to load all the goods into the carriage, and then got on the carriage under the watch of everyone. Ninghan asked doubtfully, "Miss, where are we going?" Fan Qingjao said coldly, "The Su family." Tianyu really wanted to pull his hair out when he heard this, and started to climb onto the carriage using both hands and feet. "Third sister, take me with you." Pengjing quickly reached out and pulled the person down. As a result, he saw Mu Yan fumbled to get on the carriage. I'm a little scared, but I can't let the third sister suffer, count me in." Pengjing. Complete collapse. Yuoluo could only call Ninggan, "Hurry up and leave. Have you not seen the scene and you are about to lose control?" Ninggan was agitated and quickly shook the horse rope in her hand. During this period of time, Ninggan had clearly memorized all the locations in the main city, so there was no need to ask for directions. She knew which street, which alley, and which alley the Su family was in, even with her eyes closed. Fan Kinjao sat leaning against the car window, the light in his eyes being colder than the cold wind blowing in from outside. With Su Shaoxi's current disappearance, Mrs. Su's only support in the Su family is gone. If you let those two concubines oppress you, Mrs. Su will leave before Su Shaoxi comes back. Since she decided to cooperate with Su Shaoxi in the first place, she could not let this matter go unchecked. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 67. Chapter 67. This is too arrogant. Fan Kinjao guessed that Mrs. Su was a low-key person in the Su family, but she didn't expect that she would reach such an extent. When the young man of the Su family heard that she was looking for Mrs. Su, he was surprised at first, and then reluctantly led her deeper into the mansion. Halfway through, a nun hurried over. When I learned that Fan Kinjao was coming to Mrs. Su, she was also surprised, but soon she stuffed a little bit of silver to the little sister, and sent Xiaoxuan. Then he looked at Fan Kinjao and said, "Old slave, show the way to the distinguished guest." Fan Kinjao wouldn't say much in other people's mansions, so he nodded and continued walking forward with the nanny. Just when she was about to reach Mrs. Su's yard, the old woman suddenly stopped, said in a hurry that she suddenly remembered something, and hurriedly ran to the other side. Fan Kinjao gave Ningguan a cautious look before stepping into the yard. Unexpectedly, as soon as I walked in, I heard someone crying heartbrokenly. Ningguan hurriedly followed her lady around to the backyard, and was also shocked by the scene in front of her. By the man-made pool, Mrs. Su was lying on the ground with a pale face and water all over her body. She didn't know who she was. Kneeling next to her was a crying maid, who was also soaked. Obviously, Mrs. Su had just been fished out after falling into the water. Fan Kinjao thought about the way his grandma left in a hurry just now, and the hands under his sleeves clenched a little tighter. Save people. After saying this, he rolled up his sleeves and walked over. The little maid was so frightened that she couldn't react when she saw Fan Kinjao. At this moment, Fan Kinjao didn't have time to explain. He first pressed Mrs. Su's chest with both hands, squeezing evenly for a long time, until Mrs. Su spit out all the water in her chest. Together with Ningguan, he helped Mrs. Su, who was still unconscious, into the house. When Mrs. Su lay flat on the bed, Fan Kinjao pressed his hand on the cold wrist again, and looked at Mrs. Su's closed eyelids with the other hand. Fortunately, although the pulse is weak, it is still stable, and the pupils are not dilated. Fan Kinjao breathed a sigh of relief, turned to the little maid and said, "Find your wife some clean clothes to change into." The little maid nodded blankly and hurriedly changed her wife's clothes. After everything was done, she thought of asking, "I wonder who the lady is." Ningguan. Why is this person reacting slower than her? By chance, Mrs. Su woke up at this time, and Fan Kinjao quickly sat beside the bed. "Don't be afraid, Mrs. Su, I am a friend of young Master Su." Mrs. Su was obviously full of resistance to Fan Kinjao and dodged her eyes in defiance. Fan Kinjao held her cold hand and said, after Fu finished speaking, he resigned. Zhou took his hand, Fu introduced the knife and stabbed Zhou. Zhou used his strength, but if he missed, he would kill Fu. For a moment, Mrs. Su, who was still dodging, looked straight at Fan Kinjao. Fan Kinjao then smiled sweetly, "I wonder if the ancient books I gave you are still satisfactory to Mrs. Su." This time, Mrs. Su really believed that the woman in front of her was her son's friend. That ancient book is obscure and difficult to understand, and it is extremely difficult to find it. If it were not the person who gave it to him, he would never know the content inside. But the next moment, Mrs. Su collapsed. "You are also here to report my funeral, right? 11 will really never come back, right?" Fan Kinjao frowned. Mrsu smiled knowingly, it's okay, it's really okay. It doesn't matter even if he can't come back. I can go find him, and I can continue to stay with him down there. At this time, the little maid couldn't help crying, Madam, you can't do stupid things anymore. You must be a good third young master to be happy. Fan Kinjao. Finally we have an overview of the matter. Fan Kinjao squeezed Mrsu's hand again, if I say that young Master Su is still alive, will Mrsu believe me? Mrsu was stunned, really? Fan Kinjao nodded, really? Mrsu was stunned for another long while, and finally burst into laughter. Compared to those baseless rumors, she believed in 11ER's friends more. Actually, Fan Kinjao also made nonsense. But she believed that it would not be easy for a fox-like and cunning person like Su Shaoxi to die. When Mrsu calmed down, Fan Kinjao turned to look at the little maid, do you know who was here just now? The little maid knew that this young lady was a friend of her young master, so she no longer concealed it. The two young ladies from the mansion came here, but then the lady couldn't think about it anymore. Fan Kinjao's eyes darkened. After all, he underestimated them and dared to incite the wife to commit suicide. Mrsu is indifferent to the world, but it doesn't mean that she is really stupid. Now that she hears Fan Kinjao asking her maid like this, she also understands what the problem is. It's because she was stupid. Why did she listen to other people's slanders? Fan Kinjao turned to look at Mrsu. Does Mrsu want to see young Master Su again? Mrsu nodded hurriedly, thinking about it, of course she did. Fan Kinjao then said again, since you want to, you must live well. Mrsu was stunned for a moment and smiled bitterly, it's easy to say this, but it's not easy to do it. Just at this time, a grandma came to deliver food. It was the same grandma who had led Fan Kinjao before. Mammy saw that Mrsu was fine, she breathed a sigh of relief quietly, put the food on the table and left in a hurry. Fan Kinjao glanced at the food on the table and smiled, as long as Mrsu thinks about it, it will be very simple. Mrsu didn't know what she meant when she heard Fan Kinjao say to her maid again, someone will be here soon. No matter what I say, don't refute it. Just keep going. The little maid said truthfully, no one will come. In the past, only the third young master often came to Madam's yard. Fan Kinjao stood up and disturbed the food on the table, someone will come. Since he dares to instigate killing, he must come to check and accept the results. Sure enough, soon there were footsteps outside the door. When the visitors came in, it was Su Ziping and Su Yisai who appeared in Qingnanzai today. They were stunned when they saw Fan Kinjao, and even more stunned when they saw Mrsu who was safe and sound on the bed. Fortunately, Su Ziping was quick to respond and immediately said with a smile, originally, I wanted to chat with the eldest lady. Since the eldest lady has guests, we won't disturb her. Su Yisai stared at Madame Su relentlessly, it's really difficult for the eldest lady to think about it. The third young master died outside, but you still have time to see guests. I'm afraid that the third young master has a spirit underground and will miss the eldest lady. Mrsu's body under the quilt was obviously shaking violently. Fan Kinjao instead smiled faintly and said, young Master Su has his own destiny whether he lives or dies. Why should it be someone else's turn to carry out the curse? Sui didn't expect that this half-grown girl would dare to speak, and a deep sarcasm flashed through her eyes, what do you mean by that? Fan Kinjao looked at Suzy curiously and said, if you have bad ears, you need to go see a doctor quickly. I remember there is a good veterinary hospital in the east of the city. Good guy? What a good guy? Everyone in the room was stunned for 5 seconds when they heard this. Swearing people when you come up, do you want to be so arrogant? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 68. Chapter 68 The Beautiful Return Rifle. Sui was stunned by the scolding. It took her a long time to say in disbelief, "You dare to scold me?" Sui was also frightened. I never expected that Fan Kinjao could be so tough at such a young age. He scolded people when he came up, and when he was about to offer some help, Fan Kinjao held down his hand under the quilt. Fan Kinjao sat on the bed motionless. I will definitely be scolded if I don't fulfill my responsibilities. This time, even Suziping was brought along. Suzy's face was extremely ugly, and Suziping was naturally not much better either. Seeing that Suyisai was pouted all over, Suziping smiled coldly. This little girl has such a sharp mouth. I want to ask, why do you scold us? Fan Kinjao glanced at the two people in front of him unhurriedly. The reason why I am called the little madam is because I have to share the responsibilities with the eldest lady from the moment I got married. But now that the eldest lady has been poisoned, the two young ladies are completely unaware. This time, let alone Suyisai, even Suziping was dumbfounded. The madam was poisoned. Along with Mrsu and Mrsu's maid, everyone was stunned. Why do you think you are poisoned just because you are poisoned? They didn't know anything about what happened at any time. Fan Kinjao's voice continued, if I hadn't come in time today, Mrsu would have been a corpse by now. Since I saved you, I have the right to scold you. The eldest lady was openly poisoned. If this matter were brought to Fengtian Mansion, all the young ladies in the mansion would be imprisoned in the pig cage because of their negligence. This is also why there are so many disputes among wealthy families, but few lives are involved in them. Suziping and Suyisai naturally understand this truth. Otherwise, they would not have tried every means to make the eldest lady believe that the third young master was dead and commit suicide. How could this original suicide turn into poisoning? Swiss is a paper tiger, and her brain is not enough when encountering big problems. Suziping didn't believe it. You said you were poisoned. Fan Kinjao glanced at the food on the table calmly. The eldest lady just touched that food and showed signs of poisoning. If the young lady doesn't believe it, you can try it yourself. Suziping turned to look at the food on the table. Sure enough, there were signs of being tampered with. Looking at Mrsu, who was lying on the bed with a pale face, it would be a lie to say that she was not afraid. Fan Kinjao looked at Madame Su's little maid. What are you still doing? Get chopsticks for Madame Su. The little maid became smarter now and hurried over to hand over the chopsticks, not forgetting to cry and saying, Zipping, my wife just ate this and she felt nauseated and dizzy. You have to be careful. Zipping. More scared. Looking up at Fan Kinjao, she tried to see the flaws in Fan Kinjao's face. However, Fan Kinjao's face was calm, and there was a smile on his lips, without any flaws. Suziping still tried her best. Do you know what will happen if you lie in the Su family? The Su family can be considered a big and respectable family. If it is really framed, it will be disreputable at least, and it will be 20 years old at worst. Fan Kinjao was not nervous at all, and his smile was particularly gentle. The choice is in the hands of the young lady, isn't it? Suziping. At such a young age, how come he is so smooth as if he has become a sperm? The atmosphere in the room suddenly became tense. Mrsu's little maid was almost nervous to death. Even Ninghan's palms were sweating. If the little lady is safe after tasting it, will their master still have a way to live? Mrsu could tell that the little girl sitting next to her was protecting her, but she didn't expect that she could go so far as to risk her own reputation. In this case, Mrsu seemed even more calm. How could she not live up to her expectations even if a stranger could treat her like this? Suzy came to her senses belatedly and snatched the chopsticks from Suziping's hand. I want to see if it's poisonous. Seeing that the chopsticks were already picking up delicious food, Ninghan felt that her heart was about to jump out of her chest. At the critical moment, Suziping knocked the chopsticks out of Suyisai's hands. With the danger averted, everyone in the room breathed a sigh of relief. Fan Kinjao was still very calm. For a family like the Su family, the main lady's dishes always consist of 6 dishes and 2 soups, 2 meat, and 2 vegetables. But look at the dishes on the table now, don't be too perfunctory. Obviously someone used some tricks to be harsh on Mrs. Su. And this person should be Su Ziping. Since she is harsh on people, if the food is poisonous, she will be the first to die. So she can't afford to gamble. Can't even afford to lose. Su Ziping really gave up. She lowered her head with Su Yisai and said, "What happened today was due to the negligence of the concubines. I hope the eldest lady will forgive me. From now on, the concubines will do their best to take care of the eldest lady's well-being." Mrs. Su knew not to tear her face apart, so she nodded and said, "There is no need to say it so seriously, you can just do your job." The two of them were about to breathe a sigh of relief after hearing this, when Fan Kinjao's voice rang out again. "I heard that Mr. Su is obsessed with flowers and birds these days, so I'm going to ask for advice when I have time. This is obvious. You can prevent Mr. Su from seeing Mrs. Su, but you cannot stop me from meeting Mr. Su." The matter in the backyard really got into the front yard, and Mr. Su's face naturally looked bad. Master Su will lose face even if he doesn't favor his concubine and kills his wife. Su Ziping. Swiss. Admit a mistake and still threaten? How could this girl be any more hateful? Mrs. Su is really grateful to Fan Kinjao, but it is impossible to say that she is not completely worried. She naturally knows how sharp these two little ladies are on weekdays, but I'm afraid that today's matter will never let go. Fan Kinjao certainly understood, and she had no intention of giving them a chance. "Ninggan, go and bring in everything you brought." Ninggan nodded, took Mrs. Su's little maid and ran out together. Su Ziping pulled Su Yisai and was about to leave, but suddenly she smelled a familiar fragrance coming through the door. I saw Ninghan and Mrs. Su's little maid each carrying a bunch of things through the door, and those things happened to be all the things that Su Ziping and Su Yisai were interested in Qingnanzai today. All. What is this concept? Fan Kinjao smiled and took Mrs. Su's hand. "I asked someone to buy what Mrs. Su mentioned last time. Mrs. Su can just use it. I am familiar with the head of Qingnanzai, and she promised me that in the future no one else has these things, but they are definitely not as good as Mrs. Su's." Su Ziping and Su Yisai's eyes both glowed green. How could they not understand the value of these things? When Mrs. Su saw this, she knew the mystery no matter how stupid she was. Merging with kindness and power, using both soft and hard measures. This carbine is really a beautiful kill. Hold Fan Kinjao's hand. Mrs. Su was so moved that she didn't know what to say. Su Ziping and Su Yisai came over one after another to greet Mrs. Su, and their attitudes were obviously much more submissive. Fan Kinjao's words just now made it clear that only Mrs. Su has these things. So if you want to get what they want, you must show relative sincerity. Even if Su Ziping and Su Yisai hated Fan Kinjao no more, they finally understood that the young girl in front of them, who had many friends and rich friends, was beyond their reach. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 69. Chapter 69, Breaking Up a Marriage. It was already late when Fan Kinjao returned to Hua's house. She first went to visit her grandmother, and then returned to Minjiaoiwan. To my surprise, my mother was still sitting at the round table with a night of sugar water in front of her. Fan Kinjao walked over and sat down, picked up the still warm sugar water and drank it slowly. She was not an obedient and sensible child before, so when she saw other children drinking sugar water, she would clamor for it. My mother was so poor, but she still took the mushrooms she had picked for a month and went to the city to exchange them for sugar. It's just that there was too little sugar. In order to make the sugar water sweeter, my mother secretly added some sweet herbs into it. Now, even though there is no shortage of sugar, my mother is still used to adding sweet herbs to it. This is a habit, already engraved in my bones. At that time, it was bitter for Fan Kinjao to drink the sugar water. Sweet to the point of bitterness. But now the same sugar water is sweet. Bitter and sweet. A hand gently touched the top of her head. Fan Kinjao raised his eyes and looked into his mother's distressed eyes. Crescent Moon, mother heard that Aunt Sue said that you paid a lot of money to the warehouse this month, and you also took Tianyu and Mu Yan to the shop to work together. Oh, by the way, your fourth sister-in-law today I been here before, and it said that Mu Yan's eyes can feel the light now. Hua Yulian's tears just flowed down as she spoke. Fan Kinjao quickly raised his hand to wipe his mother's face. These are all good things. Mother should smile. Hua Yulian nodded, but her tears still couldn't stop falling. Behind these good things, what kind of hard work and efforts did her Yu Yao put in? Her crescent moon is too sensible. She is so sensible that a mother like her has to feel sorry for her. Are you tired? Hua Yulian asked softly. Fan Kinjao raised the sugar water in front of him and said, Mother, this sugar water is very sweet. No matter how tired I am, my heart is still sweet. This is the path she has chosen. Not to mention tired, she will keep walking even if her head is broken and bleeding. Hua Yulian didn't know whether she should cry or laugh at this moment. Obviously I wanted to laugh, but the tears just couldn't stop flowing down. Fan Kinjao suddenly sighed worriedly, Mother, please stop crying. My daughter doesn't expect you to be the king of the country, but you can't be more kind than my grandmother. Hua Yulian. This does not mean that she is kind, it clearly means that she is old. Finally bursting into laughter, Hua Yulian helplessly rubbed her little head, which was always quirky. Fan Kinjao gave her a sigh of relief and coaxed her mother for a long time before helping her lie down on the bed. Unexpectedly, as soon as my mother fell asleep, there was a commotion outside the yard. Not long after, Nanny Sue opened the door and walked in. It turns out that the Zhao family just sent someone to deliver another message. Ever since Fan Kinjao came back from Huawei last time, the Zhao family has been sending people over every 3 days to urge them to get engaged. Aunt Sue was stunned. I've only heard that people are anxious about marrying a wife, but I've never seen someone so anxious about marrying a husband. But the old lady said that the Zhao family is considered a big family. If that Miss Zhao family, it's not a good thing to really live a good life with the young master. Fan Kinjao lowered his eyes. Grandma agrees. Su Yan nodded, agree, and a grandmother will come to settle in person. Fan Kinjao was silent for a long time and then said, Mommy, please help me call Big Brother and tell me to go out for a walk with you. Mother Su quickly responded with a smile, Little miss, wait a moment, I will go right now. She just treated her as her own young lady and was going to send blessings. But she didn't know that Fan Kinjao's thoughts were completely opposite to what she expected. Fan Kinjao stood up and left Minjiao courtyard and walked towards the door of the mansion. The Zhao family's family status is indeed impeccable, but Zhao Jianjia is not a good person. Hua Fenning hurried to the door of the house and saw Fan Kinjao standing there quietly alone. He was a little surprised, but he thought that since it was Kinjao who wanted to go out, he must not be disappointed. Just thinking about walking like this, I walked farther and farther. Hua Fenning. If we continue walking, I'm afraid we'll have to leave the city. Fan Kinjao suddenly stopped and turned to look at his brother. Brother, do you really like Miss Zhao? Hua Fenning's face turned red involuntarily as if he was struck by lightning. Are you sure this is a question a sister should ask her brother? Looking at his sister's innocent eyes, he smiled without embarrassment, which marriage in the city is not ordered by the parents or the matchmaker, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. Fan Kinjao still asked without giving up, if you could choose, What kind of sister-in-law would you like? Hua Fengning instantly felt like he was struck by lightning for the second time. After a long while, he said again, Kinjao, I actually didn't tell anyone. My favorite time was the time when I lived with you and my aunt. The people in the village were poor, but they were simple, and there was no one who was well matched. Those who got married, most people are childhood playmates, and even if they get married, they can still get along with each other as happily as they did when they were children. Fan Kinjao understood and smiled. What my brother likes is freedom, not restraint. Sure enough, the eldest daughter of the Zhao family has no relationship with her brother. Hua Fengning's spine went cold when he was laughed at, and he always felt like he was being plotted against. But he has no evidence. Seeing that the sky was getting darker and darker, Hua Fengning took his sister, who was still giggling, and walked back. Go back, I'm afraid everyone is asleep at this time, so don't disturb other people's rest. Fan Kinjao glanced behind him with his peripheral vision. At this time, not everyone can sleep. The door of the mansion, which stood quietly in the dark night, was opened by a gap. Sun Kentang walked out with dark circles under his eyes. Looking at the leaving figures of Fan Kinjao and Hua Fengning, he was so angry that his liver and gallbladder trembled together. Hey, Fan Kinjao, it's okay to take your brother out to show off in the middle of the night, and you can wander around my house chatting and laughing at 360 degrees. There will be ghosts only if I can sleep. Especially when Sun Kongtong remembered Hua Fengning's face peeked through the crack of the door, she became even more angry. Since the last flower party, her reputation has been notorious. On the other hand, Zhao Jianjia wanted to get engaged, but she still wanted to marry such an outstanding man. Why? Sun Kongtong always felt like he was going to be so angry that he would explode on the spot. After thinking about it, she suddenly tightened her cloak and quietly followed the two figures in front of her. Fan Kinjao followed Hua Fengning back to Hua's house. Smiled and said good night to her brother. When his figure completely disappeared, the smile on her face instantly disappeared. Turned around and walked out of the house again, and sure enough, he saw Sun Kongtong sneaking under the steps. Fan Kinjao stood on the steps and said with a smile, Miss Sun is so excited. Sun Kentang was so frightened that he jumped up on the spot. It took him a long time to raise his head and said, Fan Kinjao, let's talk. Fan Kinjao nodded, okay. Sun Kentang. Looking at that smile without any surprise, I always feel like something is wrong. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 70. Chapter 70 is so heartbreaking. Early the next morning, Fan Kinjao took Hua Fengning out. The name is good, go out and play. The eldest daughter-in-law Ling Wei originally wanted to come over and ask her son if he wanted to go with her to see Miss Zhao tomorrow, but it turned out to be in vain. Xinying ate the cake in her hand as if nothing had happened. My brother went out with that little bitch. The eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, was furious at this. You know clearly that your brother went out with a little bitch, how can you still sit here and eat? Xinying didn't care, what's the use of that kind of brother? Since the Zhao family and the Hua family are about to get engaged, gifts with Zhao Tang's name on them have been sent sparingly these days. A younger brother can do this to his older sister, but what about her older brother? To put it bluntly, I have no ability. Since he has no ability, he is not worthy of being her brother. The eldest daughter-in-law, Ling Wei, was so angry that she didn't know what to say. After all, she has been the one who has trained her daughter to look high since she was a child. What can she say now? Hua Fengning felt uncomfortable when she thought of Xinying's indifference and disgust towards her in the past few days. Kinjao is just the opposite. She can always appear when he is sad. Just like now, dragging him to eat snacks on the street, dragging him to watch the scenery on the bridge, looking at the smile on her face, even the haze in his heart was blown away. At nearly noon, Fan Kinjao took Hua Fengning into a restaurant by the lake. Unexpectedly, as soon as the two of them sat down by the window, the carriage with the Zhao family's brand name also stopped outside the door. Hua Fengning looked at the young woman getting off the carriage and was stunned. Fan Kinjao kindly reminded me, brother, that is Miss Zhao. Hua Fengning nodded and withdrew his gaze. That woman is decent, but to him she is a stranger even before he walks through the door. Fan Kinjao was really relieved when he saw that his brother's face didn't waver at all. Although she felt that Zhao Jianjia was not a good person, if her brother liked it, she would not interfere. Fortunately, brother's eyes are quite bright. Zhao Jianjia got off the carriage and hurried up to the second floor and entered the private room. In the private room, Sun Kongtong looked at Zhao Jianjia, who had been late for a long time, and felt a little cold. Every time we got together in the past, Zhao Jianjia was always the one late. She didn't care about such small things and never said anything. But now, she was clearly waiting for her to explain what happened at the flower party that day, but she still had the heart to be late. That's it, it's not busy. It's more that he never considered her a friend at all. Zhao Jianjia did not expect that Sun Kongtong would dare to show his face to him, and his tone became much colder. You are free to come out to me today. Sun Kongtong was too lazy to beat around the bush. That day at your house, you deliberately provoked me to grab Fan Kinjao's earrings, right? Zhao Jianjia's eyes dodge. I don't understand you. Sun Kongtong became even more sure of his thoughts. Since you gave those earrings to Fan Kinjao, how come you didn't know what those earrings were made of, but you told me that they were the same as those worn by your maid, so you wanted them on purpose. Go and break up with Fan Kinjao, because you don't like Fan Kinjao either. Zhao Jianjia seemed to have heard a joke. She is my future sister-in-law, why should I have trouble with her? Sun Kongtong also smiled coldly, because you are jealous that she is prettier than you. This is really true. It's so heartbreaking. Zhao Jianjia was too lazy to communicate with such a brainless person, but now he was really irritated. I deliberately provoked you to cause trouble for Fan Kinjao that day, but I didn't expect you to end up in such a mess. Are you stupid, and now you have the nerve to blame me? Obviously she was stupid as at the flower fair that day, but she still had the nerve to act nonsense. Who has the face to sit here and get angry now? Sun Kongtong thought about being used, but she didn't expect Zhao Jianjia to be so ruthless. This is simply turning against others. Zhao Jianjia, have you really regarded me as a friend? Sun Kongtong looked at the person he had grown up with and said that it was impossible to feel uncomfortable at all. She has a bad temper, but she has always regarded her as her best friend. Zhao Jianjia raised her chin with a sense of superiority. If I didn't treat you as a friend, do you think I would see you again? Sun Kongtong laughed angrily. If you dislike the friendship of charity, don't let it go. With a cruel heart, she spoke again. I wonder what your future husband would think if he knew you looked like this. Zhao Jianjia still had a proud look on his face. Being able to marry my Zhao family is the result of his years of admiration. If I hadn't delayed myself because of my high vision, how would I have gotten him in my turn? Sun Kongtong looked relatively calm after hearing these words, but was already shocked in his heart. Yesterday, when Fan Kinjao asked her to take the opportunity to say what she just said, she still felt it was a bit ridiculous. Zhao Jianjia has been pretending for so long, how could he be easily exposed? Fan Kinjao only said 3 words. Infuriate her. Looking at the current situation again, how can Sun Kongtong not be surprised? Fan Kinjao saw through people she had never seen through since she was a child. Let's not bring something so exciting. Zhao Jianjia thought that Sun Kongtong was speechless, and became even more arrogant as if giving alms. With your personality, who else can deal with you except me? If you want to change your mind, come to me again. We grew up together for my sake, I'm willing to ignore the past grudges. He said nothing and turned around to leave. Sun Kantong. I thank you all the family. Zhao Jianjia opened the door to the private room with a proud face, but froze in an instant. Standing outside the door was the person she had been thinking about for a long time. At this moment, the originally handsome face was filled with deep disgust. Fan Qinjiao still smiled kindly. What a coincidence, sister-in-law, my brother and I happened to be eating next to each other. For a moment, Zhao Jianjia felt like a bolt from the blue. He forced a stiff smile and tried to fight. Where are you sitting? I didn't even see you. Fan Qinjiao pushed her into the abyss again. My brother and I were just next door to my sister-in-law. The sky was spinning again and again, and Zhao Jianjia could hardly stand. She felt that she should explain, but when she thought about what she had just said, her palms became sweaty and her back was almost soaked. Fan Qinjiao's heart became colder and colder, but he still looked innocent on his face. I just heard my sister-in-law next door say it was my brother Gao Pan. Sister-in-law, what does Gao Pan mean? Zhao Jianjia. Fan Qinjiao is so hateful. A shadow suddenly shrouded her face. Zhao Jianjia raised her head and saw Hua Fengning standing in front of her. Hua Fengning was not very interested in the marriage at first. She nodded in agreement just to obey her mother's arrangement. He could allow her to despise him. But he never expected that this young lady, whom his mother said was gentle and virtuous, would actually harm his sister like this. Feeling the coolness on Hua Fengning's body, Zhao Jianjia shivered. It is a pity that Hua Fengning at this moment did not have the heart of Xiang Xianjiao, but it was cold. After saying that, he took Fan Qinjiao and left directly. Zhao Jianjia stood there with a blue face. Her scalp was numb. This taste is even more sour than being slapped in public. Sun Kongtong, who was watching the excitement in the private room, looked at the scene of relief and felt that he must have lost his mind before provoking Fan Qinjiao. This lethality. It's true that nothing is left behind. End of this chapter.